especially during an election year, we hear the word freedom bandied about a lot among both political parties, both candidates, and oftentimes they mean different things in the same word, as so often is the case with the word freedom. We often forget there's three different kinds of freedom, in my opinion. There's political freedom, there is national freedom, and there is social freedom or individual freedom. Political freedom is the basic rights of suffrage, rights to vote, rights to petition the government, rights to protest, rights. Those are political freedoms. Very, very important freedoms. Individual freedoms are the for lack of a better word, individual freedoms are the sort of everyday freedoms you have. The freedom to travel, the freedom to live where you want to live, the freedom to work where you want to work, the freedom to hire who you want to hire, the freedom to not hire who you want to hire, the freedom to just the everyday living that we do that we don't really even think about. And then that's individual freedom. And then what was the last one? National freedom is the freedom of your polity, the freedom of your the independence of your nation, of your state, of your city, of your whatever governmental entity you live under. The independence of that. And all three of these freedoms, oftentimes, most of the time in history, in most places in the world, have worked against one another. The state has often taken advantage of people's nationalistic tendencies in order to gain ascendancy within the society. The government takes over the full control of the state, and we often forget that there's a difference between the government and the state. The state is the entire society of people. The government is the representation of the state. And what happens in a nation where there's a lot of very, very rabid nationalism is this national freedom begins to overtake the individual freedom and the political freedom, to the point where people, that the state, the government, which has taken over the state, can use people's nationalism against their own liberties. They can say, for instance, people use this today and to say, well, it's patriotic to pay your taxes. That is using, national freedom against your individual freedom. Or they can say, well, many times in history you've heard, we're going to suspend the elections in the interests of you. We haven't heard this in this country yet, but we often in other countries you hear, we're going to suspend the elections in order to foster national cohesiveness. This is using national freedom, the idea of the independence of your own nation, against the political freedoms of the people and the individual freedoms of the people. And this is the great danger in not recognizing these three different types of freedom. And the key to a free society is making all these three types of freedom work together. In other words, your love of your nation needs to be a very personal thing. It shouldn't be this jingoistic thing in which we say, I get my sustenance from the greatness of the nation. No, the greatness of the nation is based upon your own greatness. It's based upon your individual greatness. It's based upon your rights. And it's based upon the extent that it defends those rights. That's what the greatness of the nation depends upon. The greatness of the nation, the freedom of the nation, for the freedom of the nation to have any meaning, it must protect the other two freedoms, the individual freedoms of your everyday life and the individual political liberty that you have. And it should not use nationalism and the idea of national freedom and national power as a hammer to hammer those other two freedoms. That is the definition of, at least potentially, if not the manifestation of an authoritarian or a totalitarian society. And that is what we have to avoid in this country, in the United States. And that's what every country has to think about and needs to avoid. And it's especially important in an election year. Especially important.